The really bad change, the most damaging and far-reaching change to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act comes in 2005. And this is when they introduced Part 3A. Part 3A is an insidious part of the planning legislation, and it was introduced by the Labor government and passed with the support of the coalition. Part 3A is where the minister can make the decision on his own about key projects. So we have a new classification for projects called state significance. So that sort of sounds fair enough. Like, you know, these days they always give something a name, so it sounds like that's okay. State significance, you think, yes, well, of course there's things of state significance, and there are, that I think the New South Wales government needs to determine. But in this classification, state significance can mean a block of flats, a new apartment skyrise, a new supermarket, or a desalination plant or a coal mine. So it can be all of those things. So that's what the minister can decide on if he calls it in. So the minister decides, and that's it. So Part 3A is incredibly insidious, really, really, really bad. So that comes in 2005. In June this year, we voted on some more changes to the planning laws, and this time the Liberals did vote against them. But yes, and that's good, but the key point is that they did vote for the key changes that have really weakened that law. So that's a bit of a thumbnail sketch of what happens to the planning laws over the last decade. What's also happening over the last decade is this enormous increase in money from the developers to Labor and the coalition parties. So in the 4 years leading up to the 2004 local government election, Labor receives $9.9 million from developers. The Liberal and National parties receive $5 million from developers. So we're talking big money here. That money has continued to increase. What's happened this week is that there's been more data come out about the donations, because that's where we're getting our information from, where the Greens Democracy for Sale gets our information from, is from the Election Funding Authority and the Australian Electoral Commission, who, and because they're the organisations where political parties and candidates have to lodge our returns. They're called disclosures, and we have to disclose what donations we receive and what expenditure we have. So that's just happened this week, is all that information has gone public. So we've been examining it. There's 2 stories in the Herald today, and we've given another story to the Herald for Saturday. The story on Saturday is that, in fact, the donations that Labor have declared is way below what they actually are. And how we found out that is that our people went through and added everything up, and it looks like it's double what they actually said. So rather than being $4 million, it's more like $8 million. So at every turn we're finding scandals, and this is what's infuriating Labor, because until the Greens came along, nobody was quantifying this data and adding it up. The journos would do stories about it, but it would be more Meriton gave 200,000 or this Hong Kong company gave this money, isn't that bad? And that was important coverage. But the difference with the Democracy for Sale site, and if you are involved in any local campaigns, it is really worth checking it out, because if you're coming up against a corporation, it's really useful to know how much money they've given to the political parties, and you can check that. Not just in a one-off, how much they gave in the last election, but with a few clicks on this website with the search facility, it will add up all the donations they've ever given or how many donations they gave in the lead up to the last election. So we stumbled across some really incredibly clever IT people who have done the site. So it's become a tool that's often used by journalists and different community groups. Interestingly, in 2007, the Liberal Party stopped their candidates accepting donations, and they all go through head office. And the Labor Party don't do that in 2007. And you probably remember some of the scandals around Noreen Hay in Wollongong about how we were able to follow the paper trail. She gets donations from this developer who she then has met with, and then she has lobbied the councillors to approve the donation. So you can make these connections. We broke a similar story in Newcastle. Jodie Mackay is the Labor candidate, and there is a big developer up there called BuildDev, and she failed to disclose a large number of donations from that company that she had banked, and that it is also got a number of developments in that area. So there was a paper trail. We could make the link, show it to the papers, the papers run it. If the Liberals had been elected, we wouldn't have had that paper trail because their candidates did not accept the donations. They all went through head office. So what is Labor doing now for this current disclosure? So on Wednesday, yesterday, there was the latest lot of data came out from the Election Funding Authority for the past 14 months. And what we're finding is that all of a sudden we're seeing Labor candidates saying we're not, they're not listing their donations. They're saying, oh, we're just getting money from head office. And we understand that they've been told not to bank the cheques, to send them through head office, so there's no paper trail. So the article in the Herald today details this, and we're calling it funneling, that they're funneling the donations through head office rather than accepting them, and then you don't have a paper trail. Like if Noreen Hay had not accepted those donations from those local developers, we would have never had all those stories. There would have not been all those scandals that gave Labor so much grief. And just to give you one example of how extreme this can be, there's a rising star in the Liberal Party called Michael Baird, member for Manly. Now, he's well connected and had some big fundraisers in Manly in the lead up to the state election, and he spent a lot of money because in his election campaign, because that was a seat that for 3 elections has been held by an independent, and the Liberals really wanted to get it back. They regarded it as their seat, and he was going to spend a fortune to win that seat back. His election expenditure was $296,000, a lot of money to run an election campaign, as you know. When you look at his disclosure at the Election Funding Authority, he doesn't list one donation. Now, we know that many fundraisers were run for the Liberals prior to the March 2007 election for Michael Baird in Manly, but no donations were accepted. So there again, no paper trail, nothing to link them.